Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the KICHLER webinar. I am pleased to let you know, joining us today, we have Michael Estrin from Estrin Zirkman Sales. He and his team are the KICHLER reps for Northern New Jersey and New York. And also joining us today is Jeff Dross. Jeff is the KICHLER Lighting Corporate Director of Education and Industry Trends. And today he's going to be reviewing the 5 lighting trends and the 2020 KICHLER release. So thank you both, gentlemen, for taking the time to be with us today, and we are truly looking forward to this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Everybody, this is Michael Estrin. Jeff, we go to the next slide. Of the Estrin Zirkman Sales Agency. As you know, we've talked to each other before. I'm that dopey picture in the middle, and everybody around me is the support team that is here for Ferguson. We are deeply committed to Ferguson's agenda of selling more lighting in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area and all over the United States. It is important to know that we will always be here for you, as I hope you know already, and all you have to do is find opportunities. We will help you win sales. Next slide, please. Joe Gallo. You know Joe. He is our key guy who calls on all the Ferguson branches, and he is your flashpoint. Direct your questions to Joe Gallo at estrin.co. His phone number is there. Please remember that face. I know a lot of you know him already, but he will go the extra mile to help you close sales. You find the opportunity, he will help you close it. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
And without further ado, Mr. Jeff Dross.
Thanks a lot, Michael. So today, as was explained, we're going to talk about 5 lighting trends, and then we're going to wrap those trends around the new 2020 KICHLER release. So the 5 trends that I'm going to speak about, the things that I think are really important for us to understand, is the architecture. Essentially, the architecture tells us or informs us how and what lighting is going to look like. We'll talk a bit about colors and the color shift that I'm calling this customization. We all kind of want a unique living environment, and customization helps us do that. I'll talk about 4 trends that seem to be kicking off pretty strongly out there. Some of them in some areas of the country are just emerging, and some you may be pretty well inundated in them, but we'll talk about these 3 new trends. And then a little talk or a little discussion about LED and how we are slowly but surely dumping our incandescent mentality. So first, we're going to review architecture begats lighting. And what I mean by that is changes and the responses that are demanded by that. So if you look at this, our architecture is essentially telling us that we are having taller ceilings. The solution for that is taller fixtures. We are seeing some smaller dining rooms. So that means we need alternative chandelier sizes. There are fewer 2-story foyers. So how do we make an impactful alternative to those 2-story chandeliers that used to be in our 2-story foyers? What can we do to make people interested in that entryway? And then urban infill architecture or townhouses, there is a substantial amount of that being built right now. How are we going to respond to that? And of course, taller, narrower lighting is the case. So let's go through these trends. The first one is the taller ceilings. So years ago, 8-foot ceilings were pretty normal. And now we are at a minimum of 9-foot and all the way up to actually 12-foot. So because of these taller ceiling heights, and you can see that in this photograph represented here, because of those taller ceiling heights, the chandelier proportions that we used years ago simply aren't going to work. We need to have these taller center dimensions on our chandeliers to, in this case, work well with this 10-foot ceiling height. Same thing with the sconces. We used to have 8 to 12-inch sconces. those really look out of place in a lot of these taller areas. We just need these taller pieces. So with this new KICHLER line, a couple of the pieces that respond to that real well is this Artem family on the left, which has a very, very tall center column, has very small glass here, and then these straps that are wrapped underneath are actually textured to look a little bit like leather. This chain and bead piece that you see on the right, this Alexa, is a combination of link chain and then beaded little clear beads that are every other, or there's basically 4 and then 3 and 4 and 3 as you go around the perimeter. But the key thing to remember is that this center height that is very, very tall in these products. This Hatton product is the same way, very stark, very clean, very simple, with just a kind of a little bit of an antique looking cup here, but the center is a very tall piece. Kadas right here is also a very tall center height that responds to that architectural demand. Taller sconces are a really good solution. So if you have these 10-foot ceiling rooms or even a 2-story great room, having a sconce like this, which has a height of this one in particular on the left, the Kadas, is somewhere around 18 to 20 inches tall. And if you look in this room set, the Jolson piece here is closer to about 15 inches. But regardless, they are taller than what we may have seen in the past. So a couple of additional new taller sconces is KICHLER on the left, and the Hatton, we saw the chandelier version of, but this is now the sconce version that's somewhere close to 22 inches in height. And that's going to fill a lot of that vertical space, especially in those 2-story great room areas.
And Jeff, let me just add to that, if I might, that these fixtures are designed not just for your residential use, but also multifamily residential use, as well as some commercial uses. Just think of a hotel that you may be involved in, that you may be doing some MRO work or some builder work. These could apply to so many different things. Now, a lot of these items may not be at your DC currently, but if you want them in your DC, speak with Heather and let's get them on display in your store, and we can arrange to have them inventoried at your distribution center. So just remember, we're not just a residential company. We have a lot of light commercial aspects to what we're doing, and we're very on trend.
Yeah, you know, this conversation is kind of geared toward residential, but there's no reason that any of these things won't apply real well for a lot of commercial or even hospitality solutions. This drill right here is actually an integrated LED. So this would be a wonderful hotel hallway solution, because it is going to meet the ADA requirements that you would find in a hotel, and it's going to take that light. And if you notice, the light is actually going off to the side. So it's going off to the side through this little white band here, and then there's an accompanying band on the opposite side of the second upright. So it would be a very comfortable hallway lighting. It would shine some light, in this case, on the door that it might happen to be next to, and wouldn't be a real glare issue. So absolutely, a lot of these things can fit very comfortably in other spaces beside the residential. But again, this most of my talking or my chatting is going to be about some residential solutions. And this Merit, again, really nice, tall answer. Let's also just speak a little bit about islands, kitchen islands. So those of you who are spending a lot of time with interior designs know that the island has changed over the years. We've moved from a relatively narrow islands to now islands that are probably bigger than a dining room table. And on top of that, we have increased the ceiling height. So we've got the ceiling height that is now 9 to 12 foot tall, and we've got a massive island. Those little cobalt blue, tiny, tiny mini pendants that we put over islands 10 years ago just are simply not going to cut it any longer. So you need to start investigating the substantially larger solutions that are available. So this, you can see, is a kind of a tricolor integrated LED piece from the Elan collection at KICHLER called Shima. This guy in the middle here is Berkeley, which is actually a fabric shade. So this is a very beautifully dispersed light with this very simple metal frame in a very clean design. And then this Jolana is actually an integrated LED piece, and there's no light bulbs or nothing in the inside center of this shade. The light is actually running around the inside of the paper clip shaped struts that are holding up that shade. So you can put your hand full through the center of the shade. There's nothing in the middle of it other than the light that's coming from these frames. So smaller dining rooms. One of the sacrificial lambs of new home construction is dining rooms, especially at entry levels. People are saying, I just don't want to have a dining room that is that large. I just don't use it enough. We can afford to, in some cases, get rid of it. But if there is, in fact, a dining room, it's not uncommon to find a 10-foot by 10-foot dining room. So you simply can't put those very large chandeliers in there. This Cassidy and this Trentino family both feature chandeliers that are a little bit smaller in diameter, that are going to work real nice in those smaller dining room settings. So what am I going to do for one-story foyers? So when we had those two-story foyers, they were very impressive. You walked into the house and you saw this massive chandelier or this massive lighting piece hanging in the center. It was very much the center of attention in a home. So with a one-story foyer, what are we going to do? Well, there are some options. There's a lot of things to think about. I like to suggest people hang a chandelier with basically no stems or no chains. Have that chandelier tucked right up to the ceiling. But in a 10-foot ceiling, this particular foyer piece would work really nice. But also look at some of these showpiece semi-flush units like the Alexa here on the right. Those are going to add a lot of dynamic to that foyer and make that the place that really can shine. The thing that's interesting is we think about the interior ceiling heights growing, but what happens when you do that is you actually grow the elevation outside as well. So if we've added 2 foot to the ceiling height on the first floor and 2 foot to the ceiling height on the second floor, our elevation is now 4 foot taller than it was for a house that was built 10 years ago. And because of that, we now have got taller elevations. But builders are starting to place homes on slightly smaller lots. So that means they're a little bit narrower. So we have these narrow, tall pieces for residential homes. And with that, you need to have taller exterior lighting. So if this piece were designed 10 years ago, this lower section would have been cut off. That product would never have been, this Varus product would never have been that tall. Same thing with the Ryler next to it and the Dellison on the side. So you're getting a taller exterior piece, and that is going to be needed for those taller elevations. To say nothing of the urban infill and townhome construction that is currently a very, very large portion of new construction and out there today. So with this urban infill that often has multi-story areas open. So if you look at this picture here on the left, this home is about a garage door and a half wide, but there are a lot of areas inside that are 2 stories. So we need to think about these slightly narrower units that are taller. That's going to do a nicer job at filling that space. And this is obviously a 3-tier piece here. This guy here in the middle, this Tula in the middle, is actually a builder priced item. So while it has a lot of style with kind of a chevron shaped exterior to it, it has a lot of visual interest as well as being very comfortably priced. Okay, we're going to shift to the next trend now that I call the color shift. And what's happening here is that finish popularity is changing. So we'll go through some of the different colors that are we're seeing some movement, and then look at what KICHLER is calling their triple play solution to help customers as they move into some of these new finishes. What I'm showing here is a spreadsheet that I have personally maintained since I've been in lighting. And what it basically tells you is the longevity of every finish that has been used in lighting since 1960. Now, the key here is to notice that every finish ends. All of these finish ends. And we are now at a point where a lot of the finishes that have been around for a long period of time in lighting have actually started to disappear, and they're starting to die. Most specifically oil rub bronze. We all know that oil rub bronze is pretty much at the end of its expected lifespan, and that's being replaced with a number of things. One of the most dominant finishes that's really taking over is this natural brass finish. This essentially is an oxidized brass. That oxidization is removed just as it had been. If those of you who happen to be a little bit about the same age as me might remember antique brass, a very similar process, but instead of leaving as much brown as we used to for antique brass, we're actually taking away even more of it, which leaves us with this very nice golden tone. This is the new Darton family, and this is kind of almost a frameless piece of glass. So we have this metal ring at the top, metal ring at the bottom, but there's no metal strut that connects the two. So that glass kind of floats in the middle of the two rings. But that's just one of the neat ways that this natural brass is expressing itself in this Darton family. If you look over here on the nye, this nye has this kind of a hockey stick arm that embraces this clear glass. Over here on the right is the Janelle bath that has kind of a very classic shaped piece of glass. All of those in natural brass. The Cassidy, we even saw that a little bit earlier in the small diameter chandelier. And the Hatton, here's a kind of a pendant, a very tall linear pendant in this natural brass shape, and then kind of just a classic ball here, contemporary ball on the right. Natural brass is also morphing into kind of a second variant of color in this in gold. So the gold is going to have just a touch more gloss to it than the natural brass. It's also going to have a little bit more of an orange coloration. So that brass is going to be more, that natural brass is going to be a little bit more on that brown side, where the gold is going to start having some of these orange undertones in it. And you see this PIM, which is kind of a low profile chandelier, which is another interesting little idea that's come out in this new KICHLER release. And this Kalisa over here on the left, which has this kind of crystal pieces. All of those are using that gold, and that additional gloss really works real nice in this, especially in this piece with the crystal boguches. Here we have some additional gold in that Berkeley. So I showed you the Berkeley before. Here's another finish. And that Berkeley is available in two sizes. This little bit taller, smaller diameter, but taller piece for over islands, and then kind of a conventional shaped pendant size, both with that frame of metal. And then the Patel over here, which has a beautiful piece of acrylic in the middle, both served really well with this, again, slightly glossier and a little bit more orangey gold. So you're going to be seeing both this natural brass and this gold as we move into the future. I don't think it's any surprise for me to tell you that black is probably the hottest finish in lighting right now. It is typically a matte finish. It's oftentimes paired with another color. It doesn't have to be, but it oftentimes is. And it works real well with a lot of different styles. You can see in this sedan family here, this is constructed of sort of looks like belts that have been strapped around this frame. There's little clasps in the middle. This has a kind of a mesh strap. That is the construction of that strap. Really interesting design in this size as well as a linear piece. But black is finding itself in a lot of different styles and a lot of different looks. And in this case, these are all straight black pieces. So this Sconces, this linear chandelier here in this Sconces family is all black, as well as this Enea. So this Enea is kind of a return to some of those more classic, traditional, smaller chandeliers. Gets you that very feminine feel, and I think a real interesting look. And then the Chrysia, which has a little bit more of a Mediterranean tinge to it, but again, all black. Here, this Erzo, which has been around in the KICHLER line for a while, has now been introduced in black. Volcan is a new family where we take this mesh, a pretty open mesh, and use that as a diffuser as opposed to a piece of glass. The Elias is an LED pendant series where there is a gold paint put onto the inside. So here's where you start seeing kind of a two-tone solutions in black. So the shade is black and then there's gold to the inside. That gold also does a real nice job warming some of that LED that's coming out of it and really have a very comfortable feel. Here we have a couple of all LED pieces from the Elan collection, the Bratine on the left, which is a nice white sphere of glass that's kind of wrapped around this lasso of black. And then this Rune family, which is just simply a quarter round strip. The LED is actually embedded in the frame. So this piece of acrylic with lines ground through it diffuse that LED that's coming from the frame. And here's where you start seeing some of that two-tone mixed with the black. So the two-tone on the right is mixed with a polished nickel. It's also available in a natural brass on this Vath family. And the Corbin in the middle is one of our reclaimed wood series. So this black, it is used on the grill work here on the metal and all of the center cluster. Here, this Grandel is not actually black. It's actually a little bit of a grayish tone, has a little bit of a texture, but mixed with the brushed nickel. And here we have a few more of the two tones. So this Bath family Moret, I showed you the tall sconce earlier. The black has this twisted centerpiece with the polished nickel trim and center. The Sconces here has matte black mixed with brushed nickel, and here's the black mixed with polished nickel again on the Clyde family, which has been in the line for a while in natural brass and old bronze. Ceiling fans are making that change as well. So ceiling fan, there's demand for that black ceiling fan. And if you look at this, what we did this in this 2000 release is take 6 of the most popular pieces that have been in the fan line and added that black finish to respond to this. There is some question about using black, and this might help when you're talking with clients. The key to understand, or the thing to remember here, is that black is a very domineering color. It can be very daunting. And if you look at this picture on the right, you can see that this particular designer used a black frame window, which incidentally, black frame window as opposed to architectural bronze windows are definitely on the uptick. So you're going to see a lot of black frame windows being used in architecture. And there's also a black, or if it's not black, it's a very, very dense gray cabinet around the wall. So by selecting these pieces, she's installed black pieces here. But take a look what happens at night. So now all of a sudden you've got about 4 times as much black because windows at night actually turn black. So you have to be very careful with that black. Think about how you might play to a secondary color. And you notice what this designer did. They used a natural brass finish on the faucet. They used natural brass hardware here. And if we were to pan out, you would see this, this old linear fixture hanging over the island in this particular photograph, which blends the black with that natural brass that kind of ties that all together. That secondary color can be important. And while, you know, all design rules are meant to be broken, if you have some customers who are living a little bit less comfortable with breaking rules, just a couple of things that I usually recommend to people. If you've got warmer a warmer room, might have a lot of beige neutrals, has a lot of wood, you might want to think of mixing the black with the brass or the gold. If you've got slightly cooler surroundings, maybe it has gray neutrals, a little bit more stainless, maybe a little bit more white in the room as well, as opposed to beige, think about mixing that black with the chrome or the brushed nickel as we have in this particular fixture. Again, just a couple of suggestions to help people use black effectively. So the next trend is white. So in the past, and for quite a few years now, polished nickel, chrome have been those go-to finishes for contemporary. White is now showing some signs of emergence. There had been some pretty early online sales for white lighting fixtures. And I think what we're doing is we're seeing that demand now coming for white. So if you see our Armstrong family, which you know is that G40 or G25 lamp, adjustable chandelier, is now available in white mixed with a natural brass. That Elias family that we talked about with the gold inside is available in white as well. And some new Elan piece, this Clevo, which is kind of an askew shade on this stem, or even you know, most of those are a little bit more on the contemporary side. Montauk is actually a little bit more leaning toward that farmhouse feel, and we've taken that milk jug that had previously been in a kind of a powder blue and now have moved it into a nice white shade. White is also finding some favor in a little bit more traditional looks too. So you can see here in this Lozano where it's in a two-tone with a black here, in a little bit less contemporary, maybe a little bit of a softer contemporary piece, and a little bit more traditional over here in this Vath pendant. So while it may have started out with an ultra contemporary look, we're starting to see a transition in demand to a little bit more traditional pieces, and it is in fact finding some favor outside as well. So what typically is happening with this white, especially outside, is we are seeing this heavier gloss finish of white outside. Now that makes sense outside. We certainly don't want to have things that have a lot of texture to them. The dirt does have a tendency to hang on to those outdoor whites that have a lot of texture. There doesn't also appear to be any consistent direction in gloss level. I am seeing gloss white as well as matte white. So right now I'm not prepared to tell you which way I think it's going to go. I do know that the gloss white does seem to have some sort of a dominance outside. I am seeing a little bit more matte white inside, but that's not a hard and fast rule at this point, or at least as of today. We also do have this Allenberry made out of our Climates material. Climates is a composite material designed for very, very harsh conditions. So if you happen to be doing an oceanside property, this is outdoor lighting made out of a composite. It has a 6-year warranty. Because it is a composite material, this white is not surface added. The entire material is white. So if you were to saw a section out of the shade, the material inside in the middle of that would be white as well. So you're not going to get that deterioration of color. And if you happen to be in a salt air environment or a seaside environment, this is going to be a really nice solution for you, because this climate's composite material is going to last in those salt air conditions where virtually no other material aside from solid bronze is going to. Next trend is that gray exterior. So for years and years and years, we've been building brown tone exteriors. We've been using beige, buff, oyster exterior colors on the siding. We are slowly shifting to this gray-black combination for exteriors. And lighting has to match. So you're seeing now a lot of black or gray finished lighting. You can see in this particular exterior elevation, this one is the Marymount family, which has a little bit of an upright of wood, and it complements the wood front door, and the black complements the black that's going on the exterior. And then of course the white exterior looks real well, looks real nice with the black finish. So a lot of gray exterior. Here's the Leyden family, which combines this this weathered iron coloration with, again, natural brass, brings in some of these classic lantern elements like this chain and this oversized loop at the top, but a very simple, clean, straightforward frame on this. So the black is again coming through to us in virtually all kinds of configurations. Here we have a little bit more of a soft contemporary, kind of an arts and crafts feel with this very arts and crafts kind of a framing on the panels here. This LED Elias piece that is connected to this Crook's arm, and then kind of your classic RLM wall-mounted pier piece here. The Marymount exterior here, I was explaining to you, the black is mixed with this painted wood here to give that a nice look. And then also keep in mind, there are a lot of exterior fans that are going to blend really well with those exteriors. Now, that does not mean that bronze colorations have disappeared. I know that I'm speaking primarily to this New York, New Jersey audience here, but there are other parts of the country, surprisingly. And some of those have very unique architectural structures. And you'll notice here, this is kind of a classic stucco construction. And on the top or the roof used here is always tile. Asphalt simply doesn't last in some of these environments. And because of that, they're compelled to use stucco and they're compelled to use these tiles. This is a very brown tone look. That black is not going to look as dynamic on it as in other environments. And over here, if you look at this picture, we're still with a little bit warmer. So you still are seeing the introduction of new bronze product. So this is the Carlson family. It's brand new, very classic, traditional feel. So still is a need for bronze, but in a lot of those new build areas, there is going to be that demand still for the new black. So bronze, black, you're going to still see new products from both colors. Just want to give you a little bit of word on brushed nickel. Brushed nickel, if we were to go back to that chart where I was tracking finishes for the last 60 years, you would find that brushed nickel now has the second longest run. Polished brass ran for 40 years, from 1960 to the year 2000. Brushed nickel is now on a 20-year and counting run. Doesn't have any, doesn't show any signs of slowdown yet. However, I would remind people or let people know that the European shows last year, most of the shows obviously this year were canceled because of the coronavirus, but the shows last year had virtually no brushed nickel in any of the European shows. Gold and brass were dominant across the entire show, and the only other color that was showing some sort of continued sign of life was chrome and a little bit of white. So while we in the United States continue to have a lot of brushed nickel showing up, such as these new pieces from KICHLER, Nye, Rome, and the Lynn Haven chandelier with this really nice knurled cup, keep in mind that we want to pay attention to brushed nickel and always be sensitive to it. Again, I'm not seeing any signs of decline, but this is the next likely color to start disappearing from our interior design palette. Now, a solution that KICHLER's come up with is this really great idea called triple play. And they've created a collection of products that are going to be available in all three finishes. This very hot black, this natural brass, which will be the dominant finish in most homes through the 2020s, and then brushed nickel, which is continuing to have this very strong presence in our homes, and offering these pieces in these multiple colors. So here we have this Capitol Hill chandelier available again in the three colors: the natural brass, the black, and the brushed nickel. The Cassidy on the left and the Edmar pendants on the right, all available in those three colors. The Berkeley on the left, I've already showed you a few of those. I have a lot of these Berkeley pieces in here because personally this is my favorite new KICHLER product that we've released. I think it just has a handsome, strong look. Of being available in these three dominant colors, I think is going to solve a lot of issues in a lot of homes. And then of course these fixed rail lights, where there is an adjustable, each one of the arms is adjustable, each one of the lights is adjustable in all three colors. This is going to be a workhorse of a product because of its simple, clean design and the fact that it's available in multiple head quantities and the three colors. Really going to be an important player. This Hatton, which is this this very stark, clean, simple series, tall sconces, big chandeliers, big pendants, again, all available in three finishes. This KICHLER family is a little bit different in that it's available in polished nickel here, the natural brass here, and then also this antique copper. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, and if you want something that's going to work well with the accents that are showing up on the KitchenAid appliances, as well as the GE Cafe product, this copper right here is just going to work so nicely with those, and that's fit real comfortably into those settings. In here, this triple play, this builder product triple play, is actually a painted gold, the black, but also in this case, foregoing that nickel and moving to the white. And these are, of course, all very comfortable. A lot of different sizes and shapes and colors in this Zaley family. Next trend we're going to talk about is customization. We all kind of want to make our homes the way we want to make our homes. And KICHLER's new collections are actually allowing that in a really nice way. This Lauren family is, I think, a really good example of that. If you look on the left, we've got this chandelier without the shades. And without the shades, it has a tendency to take on a little bit more of an austere look. I think perhaps just a touch more traditional with those exposed flame-shaped lamps. Put the shades on, and I think we've softened that room just a touch. We've made it a little bit more, leaned it a little bit more toward a contemporary look. So this Lauren, you can see here, is available in 2 colors, the natural brass and then the polished nickel, and it can be hung with the shades or without the shades. This Violette, actually in the box, both of the cups come with it. So in this case, we've got natural brass cups. We've also got brushed nickel cups over here. Excuse me, polished nickel. I wrote brushed nickel. This is actually a polished nickel cup in here. You can interchange them. I think this piece does have a tendency to look a little more traditional with the brass cup in place. I think it looks a touch more contemporary with the shinier polished nickel or chrome cup over here on the right, but it allows that customer to make a change. We looked at this Hatton chandelier prior, but the thing that I didn't mention at the time is that the arms are fully adjustable. So if you look at the center piece right down here, 2 arms are connected to a single body all the way down. It's an 8 light. There are 2 on this first one, 2, 2, 2, and 2. And they can be adjusted in a lot of different configurations. So you could adjust them so they're almost completely flat against each other, like you see here, or you could have them completely spread out. So this might be a nice solution if you're looking for perhaps a little bit more of a linear type chandelier over a narrow dining room table. You might want to flatten it out like this. If you have a round table, you could expand it out here. Kadas, I showed you Kadas as well, and Kadas comes with both nickel and black candle sleeves included in the box. So that gives you a completely different, and gives you a little bit more of a different look as well. So if you look here, sort of a classic chandelier with the nickel sleeves. Put the black sleeve on in this room, and I think it gives it a little bit more spunk, a little bit more of an attitude to that. Now, in addition to that sleeving, you can change the lamping. So if you look over here on the right, you have this classic look with classic flame-shaped lamps, and we get a substantially more traditional feel. Change that over to G16.5 lights and swap out to the black sleeve, and now you have a little bit more of a funky feel to this very interesting chandelier. Fans have always had multiple arms and frames available, and you can see here we've taken these paddles, turned them upside down. We have a plain, clean look here, and a little bit more of a wood grain here. We move to another color here. We've got this little bit more of a brown tone color to it, and we have a light wood on one side of the paddle and a little bit more of an auburn color wood on the other panel. The other part of customization is this whole idea of mixing and matching, and we've really made a lot of effort, especially in the photography that KICHLER is providing, to mix and match these groups. So if you see here, we have this really nice Nye chandelier connected to this Darton linear chandelier here. So 2 completely different families, but because of the angle, because of the coloration, they can work well together. They play nicely. So think about different sizes from different pieces. Let's take this chrome Armstrong chandelier, mix it with one of these polished nickel pieces here in the middle, and then connect it here with something that's a brushed nickel linear chandelier. A lot of different ideas. And here on a more traditional side, this is not just a contemporary look. It can be used with traditional pieces, a little bit more of a traditional or transitional look here, mixed with a little bit more of a transitional gold here, and a little bit more of a transitional pendant. So there's a lot of mix and match available. Okay, the next category that we're going to talk about is the changes in style. So there's these new styles that are coming around, and there have been a couple of names. So I'm calling it here modern Victorian. Some people have called it Nouveau Victorian, Art Deco, which I think has only got that one color, but some people are calling it the new mid-century, and then Luxe, and some people are calling that glam. So a lot of different names that are being wrapped around these, but let me kind of give you a sense of what's happening here and how the KICHLER product fits in. So this new Victorian is not going back to this classic Victorian living setting that you see down here, where virtually every surface in the space has some sort of a texture, some sort of a coloration, some kind of a finishing on it. The drapes have got a texture and a color, and the wallpaper has got 2 or 3 different patterns. The carpet is a different pattern. That's kind of classic Victorian. The idea with this new Victorian or Nouveau Victorian is to take elements of that. So in this picture on the left, you can see that this door is a beautifully detailed door, but there's a plain color placed on the wall. A very highly ornamented mirror right here, but again, against a very plain and simple table and chair in front. Here, a tufted back settee wrapped around this column against, again, another plain wall and a relatively clean baseline floor. So you're going to be, what's happening with this, as well as some of the other styles, these other 2 styles I'm talking about, you're going to be mixing this traditional maximalism with some simpler things. So we've had clean, simple, traditional. We're swinging all the way back to these much more full-bodied maximalist designs. And with this new Victorian, you're going to look for some gilt, some gold, some brass, rich, dense colors, a lot of velvet, pecan color wood. So look for this pecan color, which hasn't been around for a while. Pattern wallpaper. And remember, not everything needs to be dark. Not everything has to have to be heavy. Some elements are going to be kept light, clean, and simple. So the lighting is going to have to take, or it's going to have to understand what the look of the room is. So you might want a heavy or detailed chandelier, for example, like this Alexis, which is going to have a lot going on with it. Or maybe you want something just a little bit simpler, like this Kadas. But they're all going to work pretty nicely in this Nouveau Victorian feel. These 2 pieces, I think, are a little bit more of a dominant Victorian piece. If you were to look at this glass shape and started looking at kind of classic Victorian glass, you would find this shape, as well as this volette pendant here has kind of these classic Victorian indentations that are going to work real well with that. All right, the next one is this luxe. So think about luxe as cocktail hour, decadence. I mentioned velvet here because this velvet is just a huge theme. A lot of designers are putting velvet everywhere, using these jeweled tones again here, but with a lot of mirrors or heavily mirrored furniture. Think about Hollywood glamour. What would old 30s, 40s Hollywood look like? You're going to see touches of Art Deco, and that's where this and the Art Deco trend kind of tie together. Think about faux fur, think about lucite, which was kind of a look that came and went in the 70s. And look at how these guys might work. So these are a lot of glass, a lot of glimmer on this Darton and Tanis pendant family. The crystal bow bash and this trim right here at the center, or the body in the middle, are going to add that glitter to this. And this Patel family has these very large sheets of acrylic, and acrylic is, again, one of those material elements that you're going to see coming up again and again in that look. Art Deco, a lot of people are calling this the new mid-century. What happens if Art Deco and mid-century had a baby? That's probably what we're going to be getting, what we're going to be looking at. Again, we're not going back to this kind of classic Art Deco room that you see right here over in the right. It's going to be a little bit more subtle, a little bit more pared down. So again, chrome and brass are going to work well. Heavy grain woods are going to work real nicely. This Moret family is a nice combination that has a tendency to look very deco. This this tricolor pendant here. Shima does a good job in this quarter, and it's kind of a classic cocktail shaker or martini glass feel pendant. This Trentino also has very striking elements of Art Deco. This Sconces, which is actually a very comfortably priced piece, has elements of that deco. And look at this Rome family. I think this underside has almost this sort of Duesenberg lines to it that speak to that very strong Art Deco elements. Kind of classic pendants here. And we saw this Sylvia adjustable fixed rail here with this gooseneck that I think speaks to that mid-century / Art Deco feel. Okay, last category, last thing to talk about is dumping our incandescent mentality. LED is an inevitability in lighting. The Department of Energy expects that LED is going to control 74% of the lighting by the year 2030. That's just 9 years away, folks. We are going to be rethinking the way we look at lighting. In the past, we purchased lighting as if it were part of a furniture store. It's pretty, it looks nice with the furniture, it'll match the window coverings. And now we're going to start slowly shifting to a little bit more like appliances. What kind of warranty am I going to get? How long is this going to last? What parts are going to be guaranteed? So customers are going to be asking additional questions as we move into LED, and you are going to have those answers for them. We've gone through this very, very specific change in the past where we moved from a tube-based television that we could replace the tubes and we could keep our TVs forever, and we've kind of transitioned to these flat screens. In the past, my mother used to fix our TV. She would go in the back, change a tube, and now no one wants to crack open the back side of their flat screen and start poking around with a screwdriver to try to change one of the circuit boards. It's just not going to happen. But it's not going to be as simple as taking this incandescent light bulb and shifting it over to an LED light bulb. This is going to be more to the case. This is kind of a classic, typical chandelier that is very beautiful and very wonderful, but this is actually Zaha Hadid's solution. So if those of you who know Zaha Hadid, she was a fabulous architect, and she unfortunately died a couple years ago, but she still is one of the most forward-thinking today because they're still building some of her designs. She's still one of the most forward-thinking architects out there, one of my personal heroes. This is her idea of what a chandelier should look like. Completely unlike the chandelier on the left, but she was just not set with this look. She actually wanted it to turn colors. So she essentially was reinventing what her concept of a chandelier was, and that's ultimately what is going to be happening in the future. So you're going to look at shapes that were impossible to illuminate in the past. This is the Norun family, part of Elan. And as I said earlier, the LED is along this rail. There's nothing on this metal back here. There's no light bulb sticking out. The LED is along this rail. It lights up this piece of illuminated diffuser, and the cuts that are made, the incisions that are made inside this diffuser actually push that light out for use. The light bulb is going to disappear. So we talked about this Jolana family here. The light is actually on the inside of this rail. It's not enclosed within that shade. It's actually on the support rail. This Ryler, the LED is in the middle of that diffuser. Here's the Ryan mirrors. The Ryan mirrors have a mirror here, and then there is a shadow box frame around the mirror, but the LED is actually behind and perpendicular to the mirror, and you can kind of see that right in this upright. So it's a completely different way. It's going to provide you with a diffused light in this case. We've seen this transition, so everyone knows what this is. This is an old recessed can, and that was switched over to a screw-in internal unit. And now we've transitioned to this LED downlight. This used to be the way we did architectural detail lighting. It was a festoon lamp, it was finicky, it was hot, it left hot spots, and now we've transitioned to LED tape. Color of light is going to become more important. We now have the ability to select a color, and you're seeing selectable products. So you're probably all familiar with the Philips lamp and the selectability that comes with the app, but the KICHLER under cabinet, this particular piece can be switched between 2700 and 3000 with just the flip of a switch. But many people are asking, why do I want different colors? Well, different colors will actually maximize the colors that are in the space. 2700 LED is going to look best when lighting warm rooms, beige neutrals, woods, golds, yellows, earth tones. You're going to get a much better representation of color when you're lighting those with the 2700. Now, if you have a cool room, if you have a lot of black and white, blues, purples, greens, stainless steel, gray neutrals, the 3000 is going to look better. If you look at this cabinet right here, this cabinet, this bay is lit with 2700, this bay is lit with 3000, and this bay is lit with 4200. Just agree to yourself which of the three bays looks closer to white. I think you'll agree with me that the center bay does, and that's because it's using that 3000 Kelvin color temperature, and it works best to represent white. When am I going to use 4000? Pretty much nothing after a commercial, unless you happen to have a client who's lighting a crystal collection or a sterling collection. That's going to dump a little bit more blue into those areas, and it's really going to maximize itself. So a lot of people are saying, well, you know, I don't know that if I want an LED chandelier. Remember that LED is actually going to be taking over in a very, very deliberate way. If you happen to know anything about landscape lighting, you will know that landscape lighting has almost completely switched over to an LED business. That tape, LED tape, has essentially gotten rid of all of those festoon lamps. Recessed lighting, for the most part, is LED at this point. Under cabinet lighting has completely switched over to LED. Bathrooms are probably next, and I think a lot of these mirrors are going to be the reason why. I think we're going to be seeing some substantial changes in the mirror. The last thing that's probably going to change are those traditional chandeliers. If we want to know where we should use LED, we can look to this study from the Department of Energy, which tells us how many light bulbs we use and how often we use them. If you look at this list, there are some very clear solutions that you should offer to your clients. We use lighting outside for the most amount of hours and consume the most amount of wattage. So if we want to make one change in a home, we should be suggesting to our customers a switch to exterior LED. Next choice should be the kitchen. Again, inside the house, most amount of hours with the most amount of power consumption. If we simply took those first two things off the list, we would save our customers money. But we also have to help our customers understand that they need to look at life cost instead of first cost. Let me explain what I'm talking about. I'll just want to share with you a little bit of a cost breakdown. If you look at, we'll just go through 6 LEDs, look at the different cabinets and the lamping and the electricity. And if you look at this, our lighting fixtures for the xenon system are less expensive than the LED. So if we were simply looking at a first cost analysis, it would be better for us to buy the xenon. No change with the cost of the power cables. But we are going to save a lot of money on replacement lamps. We're going to save a ton of money on electricity because they're substantially a lot more efficient. And if we look at the life cost of that lighting fixture, we're going to be saving over $1,700 based on a national average. So we can save money, but it's going to be a slightly different expenditure, a little bit more upfront and save the money in the long term. And with that, I'm going to end with a couple of non-lighting trends to consider and follow. Blue continues to be strong. Disappearing appliances appear to be strong. What I mean by that is that the appliances don't just magically disappear. The fronts of them are covered in some sort of a match to the cabinetry. People are paying attention to ceilings. They're finishing ceilings. They're putting wallpaper on ceilings. And some of that wallpaper might in fact be bold. I mentioned velvet a couple times. I'll bring it again here. Marble terrazzo, and we've seen that on a couple of the chandeliers that I showed you. Cane and rattan, we've got this beautiful Oana family that has both a cane and a rattan frame available, and then glazed ceramics. Things that you should be cautious of. Nautical has been around for a long time. Those reimagined mason jars, long time. Exposed filament Edison lamps, they have been with us for about 12 years now. So we have to start thinking that they are going to be at the end of their lifespan. Granite countertops, you probably already know, are disappearing. And the farmhouse, I'm hearing a lot of rustling that people have had it with farmhouse. So expect those to have a shorter lifespan. And with that, these are the 5 trends I discussed with you today. Architecture and how it informs the lighting, the color shift, customization, the 3 new aesthetic trends, and then a little bit of our incandescent mentality. I know we are right here at the top of the hour. If Michael has been looking at some of the questions that may have been put in, if there are any questions, maybe he's got one. If not, let's see what he's got to say.
I wasn't lucky enough to see everybody's questions, unfortunately, Jeff.
Okay.
But that as it is, you guys know to contact Joe Gallo or myself anytime. KICHLER is the most important preferred brand that Ferguson sells. We sell more product in 2019 than any other lighting brand to the Fergusons nationally. And in the New York, New Jersey marketplace, our business was up 287% together. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because some of the stores were re-merchandised, but most importantly is you folks are promoting the brand. You know that KICHLER is very diverse. We sell everything but track and recessed, and even some of our new ceiling rail lightings can be considered track. It is our job to give you what you want. If you're not seeing what you need, please ask. Maybe it's a different finish. Maybe it could be a custom item. Just ask and allow us to hunt it down for you and come up with the proper solutions. Remember, you find the opportunities very early in a sales cycle because they're looking for all the plumbing hardware. You have such an advantage over standalone lighting showrooms because you make the first sale, and you know the hardest sale is the first sale, and you're able to then say to that consumer who's getting, let's say, their hardware for their new master bath, well, I also provide lighting fixtures, very up to date, and find those opportunities. Jeff, were there any questions texted?
So I did take a look, and I just had one. It looks like one person had a comment that said brushed nickel is their #1 seller, and you're absolutely right. I am not surprised that brushed nickel is your #1 seller. And my point was that brushed nickel nationally does continue to sell. However, if we look at the trends and we understand the history, there is limited amounts of brushed nickel that is currently being used in Europe. We all kind of understand that Europe is, they set the standards first. They came out with the natural brass before America did. And before that, they had the massive amounts of kind of European chrome before that. So yes, I would expect that brushed nickel is going to be your #1 seller. And my only point is to keep in mind that all finishes disappear eventually. And I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on brushed nickel. Just be sensitive to it, look around, and when it starts looking old to you, because you're going to notice it first, there are going to be replacements for it. So
I think it's fascinating, Jeff, that you also talked about bronze, that bronze is truly on the back side of the curve. We all sell a bunch of bronze. We got
sure
another
do.
course today.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you sure do.
Yeah.
We've been
And
seeing that trend go down in plumbing for quite a while though, too.
right. And you know, so here's the thing. Here's the thing about a bronze, and virtually every color. If we went back and looked at all of those finishes, you know, Michael will remember old brick, which was the most popular color before old bronze, and he'll also remember antique brass because that was the most popular color before old brick. All of those colors, along with polished brass, they were selling at a very, very, very high point when they started tumbling down. So we're all still making money on old bronze. We were all still making money on old brick as it was going down. We just aren't making as much of it as we used to. And because it's coming from such a high point, you don't notice it initially. So maybe you were selling, and I don't know, I'm just making up numbers. Maybe you were selling $1 million worth of old bronze, and now you're making 750. That's still a good amount of money, but it's 25% less than you were last year. And if you now look at next year, you're going to sell $500,000. Nobody's going to push away $500,000 worth of sales. But we can understand, well, maybe Michael is because he's got a lot of wealth, but most of us aren't going to push away that amount of sales. So the important thing to remember is that as they start coming down, they're coming down while still delivering us a lot of money.
Well put. Heather, what would you like to say to kind of end our meeting today?
Well, I just want to thank you both for being on it. Jeff, that was an incredible presentation, and it strikes us perfectly because Ferguson tries to be a whole house showroom. So your insight to the trends helps our consultants better understand where their customers are coming from, what products to guide them to, and seeing how the KICHLER products fit into the trends that you see coming is extremely helpful. And we also merchandise our showroom by lifestyle or by trend. So this was just a complete circle, a full package, if you will, of everything that we touch on a daily basis. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, it was a pleasure being here with all of you and all of you who are working from home, I guess, or some of you who might be working from home. Thanks for taking this hour out of your day. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Michael and Michael's staff. And if he can't answer, he's going to go ahead and get back to me. I hope this was helpful and informative information for you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye.